They took her during pickup. I was standing exactly where I always stood, 20 feet from the curb, close enough to see every child's face as they climbed into their parents' car, far enough to supervise the entire dismissal zone. October 15th, 2024, 3:17 p.m. Lily Chen, 7 years old with dark pigtails and a frozen backpack, walked toward the silver Mercedes her stepmother always sent. Except this time, the driver wasn't the usual one. This time, 3 things happened in the span of 18 seconds that made my FBI training kick in before my teacher brain even registered the threat. The driver didn't make eye contact with me. The rear passenger door opened before Lily reached the car. And the license plate, I'd memorized every parent's plate in my first week, was wrong by 2 digits. I was running before I consciously decided to move, my whistle already at my lips, but the Mercedes was pulling away. Lily's pale face pressed against the rear window, her mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear over the rush of blood in my ears. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. Professional, precise, planned. And I knew, with the cold certainty that comes from 5 years hunting child predators for the FBI, that this wasn't random. My name is Amanda Price. I'm a 2nd grade teacher at Meadowbrook Elementary in Pasadena, California. I make $68,000 a year, drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic, and spend my weekends grading spelling tests and planning field trips to the Natural History Museum. But before I was Miss Price with the cheerful classroom and the gold star stickers, I was Special Agent Amanda Price, FBI Crimes Against Children Unit, with a 94% case closure rate and a reputation for finding kids when everyone else had given up. I left the bureau 3 years ago after a case went wrong. A 6-year-old boy named Michael Torres, who I'd tracked for 17 days, following every lead, every shred of evidence, only to find him 40 minutes too late. 40 minutes. The difference between a child coming home and a child in a body bag. I handed in my badge the next morning and spent 6 months in therapy learning to accept that I'd done everything right and it still wasn't enough. Teaching was supposed to be different, safer. A way to protect children without the soul-crushing weight of life and death stakes. I could shape young minds, create safe spaces, be the adult who noticed when something was wrong and actually did something about it. And then Lily Chen walked into my classroom 8 months ago, and I saw the signs I'd spent 5 years learning to recognize. It was February, mid-school year transfer, which was unusual for Meadowbrook Elementary. Most families who could afford our $28,000 annual tuition didn't switch schools mid-year unless something was wrong. Lily arrived on a Tuesday morning wearing a pristine white dress with a Peter Pan collar, her dark hair in perfect pigtails tied with lavender ribbons, her frozen backpack so new the tags were still attached. Victoria Chen brought her in personally, her hand resting on Lily's shoulder with the kind of pressure that looked affectionate but made Lily's whole body tense. I'd seen that posture before, the frozen stillness of a child who'd learned that moving the wrong way brought consequences. "This is my stepdaughter, Lily," Victoria said, her smile brilliant and warm and completely absent from her eyes when she looked down at the child. "She's a bit shy, but I'm sure she'll fit in wonderfully." "Lily, say hello to Miss Price." Lily looked up at me with dark eyes that held too much caution for a 7-year-old. "Hello, Miss Price," she whispered, the words perfectly rehearsed. "It's nice to meet you, Lily," I said gently, crouching down to her level, a technique I'd learned in the FBI for interviewing traumatized children. Meet them at eye level. Make yourself less threatening. Let them set the pace. "We're so glad you're here. Would you like to pick out which cubby you like for your backpack?" A flash of something. Surprise? Hope? Crossed her face before Victoria's hand tightened slightly on her shoulder. "Lily doesn't need choices, Miss Price. She's fine wherever you put her. Aren't you, sweetheart?" The word sweetheart came out saccharine, performative, and Lily nodded quickly, her eyes dropping to the floor. I assigned her the cubby next to my desk, close enough that I could keep an eye on her, far enough from the other children that she'd have space to breathe. Victoria left with a final reminder to behave perfectly, and I watched Lily exhale for what seemed like the first time since entering the room. That first week, I documented everything. It was instinct, muscle memory from 5 years of building cases. Lily flinched when I raised my hand to write on the whiteboard. She ate her lunch in careful, tiny bites, never finishing more than half, always leaving the special items. Cookies, fruit snacks, anything that looked like a treat, untouched in her lunchbox. When I asked if she wanted the cookie, she shook her head quickly, her voice barely audible. "I'm not allowed." "Not allowed by who?" I asked gently. Her eyes darted to the door, as if Victoria might materialize. "My mommy says I need to watch my figure. She says girls who eat too much get fat and nobody loves fat girls." 7 years old. Already learning that love was conditional on appearance, on perfection, on making yourself smaller. The bruises started appearing in week 3. A purple mark on her upper arm, perfectly thumb-shaped. When I asked about it during recess, Lily pulled her sleeve down quickly. "I fell," she said, the words automatic, rehearsed. "I'm clumsy." I'd heard "I'm clumsy" from dozens of abused children. It was the script their abusers taught them, the explanation that shifted blame from perpetrator to victim. You didn't fall. Someone grabbed you. But I couldn't say that to a 7-year-old who was already terrified. I took photos, discreet, documented, time-stamped. I filed my first CPS report in March, detailing the bruises, the food control, the fear responses, Lily's statement about "nobody loves fat girls." I submitted it to Helen Torres, our vice principal who handled all child welfare reports as the school's designated liaison. Helen called me into her office 2 days later. She was in her 50s, a 20-year veteran of Meadowbrook with a reputation for being thorough and child-focused. I'd trusted her completely. "Amanda," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I've reviewed your report about Lily Chen. I understand you're concerned, but I've also spoken with Victoria Chen and reviewed Lily's medical records. The bruise was from a playground accident at home. Victoria's been very forthcoming about it. Lily's on the clumsy side. Her pediatrician has it documented." "Her pediatrician who Victoria takes her to?" I asked carefully. "Her pediatrician, who is a licensed medical professional with no concerns about abuse. Amanda, I know you come from a law enforcement background, and I appreciate your vigilance. But sometimes bruises are just bruises. Sometimes children are clumsy. We need to be careful about making accusations that could destroy a family." I wanted to argue. I wanted to pull out my FBI credentials, my 5 years of experience, my 94% case closure rate. But I also knew how the system worked. I knew that teachers who pushed too hard, who questioned administrators too loudly, who became problems, found themselves transferred or pushed out. So I smiled and nodded and said I understood. And then I kept documenting. April brought long sleeves on 85-degree days. May brought Lily arriving at school with exhaustion so profound she fell asleep during reading time, her head on her desk, her breathing shallow. When I gently woke her, she jerked awake with a gasp, her eyes wild with panic. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'll be good, I promise." "Lily, sweetheart, you're not in trouble. You're safe here. I just wanted to make sure you're feeling okay." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Safe. The concept seemed foreign to her. "I didn't sleep good," she finally said, her grammar slipping in her exhaustion. "Victoria says I make too much noise at night. She locks my door so I don't disturb her." Locked door. A 7-year-old locked in her room at night. I added it to my documentation, filed my second CPS report in May, this one detailing the exhaustion, the locked door, the escalating fear responses. Helen Torres assured me it had been thoroughly investigated. Victoria had explained that Lily was a sleepwalker, that the locked door was for Lily's safety, that she had a baby monitor in the room to hear if Lily needed anything. The pediatrician supported it. Everything was fine, except nothing was fine. I could see it in Lily's eyes, in the way she shrank into herself, in the perfect behavior that came from a child who knew that any mistake brought punishment. By June, Lily had stopped making eye contact with anyone. She completed every assignment with mechanical precision, her handwriting perfect, her answers correct, but her spark, that natural curiosity and joy that 7-year-olds should have, was completely extinguished. I filed my third CPS report in June. This one was longer, more detailed, 8 pages of documented observations spanning 4 months. The bruises, the food control, the locked door, the exhaustion, the fear. The way Lily flinched at sudden movements, the way she apologized for things that weren't her fault, the way she'd started picking at her cuticles until they bled, a self-soothing behavior I'd seen in dozens of traumatized children. Helen Torres called me in again. This time her voice was less gentle, more irritated. "Amanda, this is becoming a problem. Victoria Chen is a generous donor to this school. She's on our parent advisory board. She's dedicated to Lily's well-being. Your repeated reports are starting to look less like concern and more like harassment. CPS has investigated 3 times now and found nothing. Maybe it's time to consider that you're seeing things that aren't there." "Or maybe Victoria's good at hiding what she's doing," I said, my voice harder than I'd intended. "Maybe she's got doctors and administrators convinced because that's what abusers do. They're charming and convincing, and they know how to work the system." Helen's expression went cold. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any actual evidence? Any proof beyond your interpretation of normal childhood behaviors?" I didn't. That was the problem. Everything I documented could be explained away. That's what made emotional abuse and covert physical abuse so insidious. It left marks that could be denied, behaviors that could be reinterpreted, a paper trail that protected the abuser while questioning the victim. "I know what I'm seeing," I said quietly. "Then perhaps," Helen said, her voice dangerously soft, "you should consider whether your FBI background is making you see threats where none exist. Trauma does that to people. You left the Bureau for a reason, Amanda. Maybe that reason is affecting your judgment here." It was a direct hit, and she knew it. Michael Torres, the 6-year-old I'd found 40 minutes too late, the case that broke me. She was suggesting my trauma was making me manufacture an abuse case, that I was so desperate to save a child, I was seeing danger where there was none. I walked out of her office shaking with rage and self-doubt. What if she was right? What if I was seeing things that weren't there? What if my need to save a child, to not fail again the way I'd failed Michael Torres, was making me paranoid? But then I'd see Lily in my classroom, and I'd know. The way she moved through the world like she was trying not to exist. The way she never laughed, never played, never relaxed. The way she looked at Victoria during pickup with eyes that held pure, unadulterated fear. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. The first 48 hours after the kidnapping were chaos. Police swarmed the school. Parents pulled their children out in a panic. The local news ran footage of our dismissal area on loop. The playground I'd supervised for 3 years now transformed into a crime scene with yellow tape and forensic photographers. I gave my statement to Detective Sarah Morrison, Pasadena PD, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who took notes on everything I'd seen. "You got a partial plate," she said, "not a question. That's more than most witnesses." "I memorize all the parent vehicles," I said. "Protocol." Her eyes sharpened. "That's pretty thorough for a teacher." "I used to be FBI, crimes against children." The shift in her demeanor was instant. "Why didn't you lead with that?" "Because I'm not FBI anymore. I'm a teacher who just watched one of her students get kidnapped on my watch." The guilt was crushing. I'd been standing right there. I'd seen it happen. I'd failed to protect Lily, just like I'd failed to protect Michael Torres. And the familiar weight of that failure settled over my shoulders like a familiar coat I'd thought I'd thrown away, but had been waiting in the closet all along. The ransom call came 36 hours later. William Chen, Lily's father, a software entrepreneur worth approximately $200 million, received the demand on a burner phone left in his mailbox. $10 million. Wire transfer to an offshore account. 72 hours or they'd never see Lily again. I wasn't supposed to know these details. I was a teacher on administrative leave pending investigation into security protocol failures during the kidnapping. But I'd made friends during my 3 years at Meadowbrook, and one of them was Rebecca Martinez, the school counselor whose husband happened to be William Chen's estate attorney. "He's paying," Rebecca whispered to me over coffee at a Starbucks 3 blocks from school, her hands shaking around her cup. "The FBI says pay and track, but William's not waiting. He's terrified. Victoria's been hysterical, completely falling apart." I stirred my coffee slowly, processing. Victoria's falling apart? Hasn't slept? Barely eating? She's at the house 24/7 waiting for news. That was interesting, because in my 5 years hunting predators, I'd learned that real grief looks different from performed grief. Real panic doesn't schedule itself around meals and makeup. Real terror doesn't maintain a manicure. Has anyone looked at Victoria? I asked carefully. Rebecca's eyes widened. What? Amanda, no. She's devastated. She loves Lily. Does she? I'd been documenting signs of abuse for 8 months. Bruises explained as playground accidents. Lily's fear responses around her stepmother. The way Victoria's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at her stepdaughter. The too perfect performance of the devoted parent who always made sure people saw her devotion. That night, I pulled out my laptop and did what I should have done 8 months ago. I ran a full background check on Victoria Chen, née Victoria Bradford. What I found made my blood run cold. Victoria had married William Chen 18 months ago, 6 months after his first wife died of a sudden brain aneurysm. Before marrying William, Victoria had been drowning in debt, $800,000 in credit cards, medical bills from an uninsured car accident, and a failed business venture. Her social media from that period showed desperation masked as wellness content, the kind of aspirational lifestyle posts from someone who couldn't afford the lifestyle they were photographing. Then she met William Chen at a charity gala. 3 months later, they were engaged. 4 months after that, married. And suddenly, Victoria's debt disappeared. Her social media transformed into luxury brands and exotic vacations, and she stepped into the role of stepmother to a 7-year-old girl who stood between her and a $180 million fortune. Because I'd also pulled William's estate documents. Not hard when you know which databases to access and have kept your FBI credentials current enough that the system doesn't flag your searches as suspicious. Lily was the primary beneficiary of William's estate. Victoria got a comfortable but not extravagant allowance, a prenup that protected William's assets, and nothing if they divorced within 5 years. But if Lily died, Victoria became the sole heir. I sat in my apartment at 2 a.m., staring at my screen, watching puzzle pieces click into place with the sickening clarity of a case breaking open. The kidnapping had been too professional. The crew knew the exact pickup routine. They knew which day I supervised dismissal. They knew the camera blind spots, and Meadowbrook had excellent security cameras that covered every angle except for a 3-foot gap near the southwest corner of the parking lot. The same gap the Mercedes had used. Someone with inside knowledge had disabled those cameras. Someone who knew the security system, who had access to the control room, who could create the perfect window for a kidnapping without leaving evidence. Someone like Administrator Helen Torres, who handled all security protocols and had dismissed every one of my CPS reports about Lily. I pulled up Helen Torres's financial records. Another gray area search that would never hold up in court but would point me in the right direction. And there it was, buried in her checking account deposits from 6 weeks ago. $500,000 from a shell company registered in Delaware. The same shell company that appeared in Victoria Chen's financial records. Victoria hadn't just planned to kill her stepdaughter. She'd recruited a school administrator to help her do it, paying her $500,000 to look the other way while a child was kidnapped from school grounds. I had 2 choices. Take what I'd found to the FBI and watch them build a case over weeks or months while Lily stayed missing. Or do what I'd spent 5 years learning to do, hunt. I chose to hunt. The ransom call recordings were my first priority. I called in a favor from my former mentor, Supervisory Special Agent Robert Martinez, who'd spent 3 decades in the Bureau and still had enough pull to get me access to evidence without officially involving me. "You're not FBI anymore, Price," he said when I showed up at his office in the LA field office. "I can't just hand you case files." "Then don't hand them to me. Let me listen. 5 minutes. I specialized in voice pattern analysis for 3 years. If this is a professional crew, I'll recognize their methodology." He studied me for a long moment, then pulled up the audio files. 5 minutes, and if anyone asks, you were never here. I listened to the ransom call 3 times. Professional crew. Former military, probably Marines based on the communication style. The slight accent suggested Southern California or Arizona. The phrasing was careful, not scripted, but practiced. These weren't amateurs running a kidnapping. These were hired guns, and someone had paid them very well to make this look like a cartel operation. "It's staged," I said. "They're mimicking cartel MO, but it's off. Cartels don't do this kind of precision work in Pasadena suburbs. This is a crew for hire, and whoever hired them told them exactly how to play it. Martinez leaned back in his chair. You're thinking inside job. I'm thinking stepmother with $800K in debt, a motive of $180 million, and a 6-week window where she paid off a school administrator right before the kidnapping. Can you prove any of this? Not in a way that would hold up in court, but I can find Lily. That's what matters. He was quiet for a moment. You're going to run your own investigation. I'm going to do what I do best, find a missing child. Amanda, if you're wrong, if Victoria's innocent and you're pursuing this, you'll destroy your career. You'll face charges for illegal surveillance, hacking, invasion of privacy. The Bureau can't protect you. I can't protect you. I met his eyes. A 7-year-old girl is missing. I was standing 20 feet away when they took her. I'm not wrong. And I'm not letting her die because I was too scared to break rules. He sighed, then slid a file across the desk. This is the crew's methodology report. If it happens to fall open while you're leaving and you happen to memorize the contents, I can't control that. I memorized every word. The investigation consumed me. I stopped sleeping more than 3 hours a night, surviving on coffee that tasted like bitter desperation and the gnawing fear that every hour I didn't find Lily was an hour closer to losing her forever. My apartment became command central. Walls covered in printouts, timeline charts, financial records spread across every surface like a paper tumor growing out of control. I tracked Victoria's movements obsessively. Every traffic camera, every ATM withdrawal, every social media post. She was performing grief beautifully, posting tearful messages about her precious stepdaughter, sharing photos of Lily with captions about hope and prayer, attending candlelight vigils organized by concerned Pasadena parents. But I'd learned to read people during my FBI years, and Victoria's grief had a calculated quality, like she was following a script someone had written for her. More importantly, her search history told a different story. Getting browser data required skills I'd learned in the FBI's cybercrimes unit during a 6-month rotation. It also required crossing legal lines that would never hold up in court. But I wasn't building a court case yet. I was finding a child. Victoria used a laptop at home, connected to the Wi-Fi network that I'd gained access to through a method I will never commit to writing and never mention in testimony. Her cloud backups were automatic, and if you know the right forensic software, deleted data isn't really deleted, it's just harder to find. What I found made my hands shake so badly I had to set down my coffee before I spilled it. 6 months ago, successful child kidnapping insurance claims, plus how to make kidnapping look real. Cartel kidnapping methods, California. 4 months ago, Lily Chen trust fund terms, inheritance rights, stepmother versus biological child, California probate law, child death. 3 months ago, Helen Torres Meadowbrook Elementary, plus school administrator salary, security system vulnerabilities, private schools. 2 months ago, multiple searches for professional kidnapping services, deleted, but backups captured them. Offshore account setup, Cayman Islands, shell company, Delaware registration. 1 month ago, cleared her entire browser history on August 15th, but the cloud backup from August 14th showed everything. She'd been planning this for 6 months, researching, calculating, building a murder plot disguised as a kidnapping while playing the devoted stepmother at charity galas and PTA meetings. I traced the $500,000 payment to Helen Torres through banking records I absolutely should not have had access to. The shell company, Monarch Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware on July 3rd, had no actual business operations. Its sole purpose was to funnel money from Victoria's accounts, which were really William's accounts, to Helen Torres's checking account on September 1st. 8 days before the cameras mysteriously malfunctioned during dismissal. 12 days before Lily was kidnapped. The timing was too perfect. Victoria had recruited Helen, paid her $500,000 to create the security gap, and orchestrated the kidnapping down to the minute. Helen, who I'd trusted to protect the children in our school, who dismissed my 3 CPS reports with reassuring competence, had sold out a 7-year-old for enough money to retire comfortably. But knowing who and knowing where were different problems. Lily had been missing for 43 hours. when I started tracking the kidnapping crew. Professional kidnapping crews leave traces if you know what to look for. I pulled the ransom call recordings from Martinez. He'd given me access because he knew my voice analysis skills were among the best the Bureau had ever seen. I'd spent 3 years in the behavioral analysis unit specializing in linguistic patterns, speech markers, regional accents that revealed where criminals were from, even when they tried to hide it. The crew leader's voice had tells. Military background, the way he structured sentences, the command phrasing, the controlled breathing. Specifically Marines, based on terminology choices that civilian criminals wouldn't use. Southern California or Arizona accent, subtle but present in certain vowel sounds. Age approximately 35 to 45 based on vocal tone and reference points. I ran the profile through FBI databases I still had backdoor access to. Another line I was crossing, another rule I was breaking. 7 matches, 5 with alibis, 2 who fit the profile perfectly. Marcus Webb, former Marine Corporal, dishonorable discharge 2019, last known address in Riverside. Crew leader for 3 previous kidnappings, all professional jobs, all recovered ransoms. Marcus Webb was for hire, and someone had hired him to kidnap a 7-year-old and make it look like cartel work. Finding his current location took 36 hours of surveillance work I did on 0 sleep and pure adrenaline. I tracked his known associates. I monitored their phone records through methods I learned from FBI tech specialists. I identified patterns, calls to specific numbers, movements to specific locations, a network of contacts that all pointed to one thing. They were working out of San Bernardino. Specifically, they were using properties in rural areas with low law enforcement presence. I pulled recent rental agreements for properties within 50 miles of San Bernardino. Not hard when you know which county databases to access and have kept your old FBI credentials just current enough that automated systems don't flag your searches as suspicious. 17 properties matched the profile. Rural, isolated, rented in the last 90 days, payment methods that suggested cash or shell companies. Properties that a professional crew would choose for exactly this kind of operation. I drove to every single one over 72 hours, operating on maybe 8 hours of sleep total across 3 days, fueled by gas station coffee and protein bars that tasted like cardboard. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My eyes burned from staring at address numbers and license plates. My body was running on autopilot while my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Lily had been missing for 71 hours. The 72-hour ransom deadline was approaching. Professional crews don't keep hostages longer than necessary. It increases risk, increases chance of discovery, increases likelihood that something goes wrong. If Victoria had ordered Lily's death after the ransom payment, the crew would execute that order within hours of receiving the money. And William Chen was paying. The wire transfer was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning was when Lily would die. Property 12 was abandoned. Overgrown weeds, windows broken, clearly unused for months. Property 13 made my blood run cold. Foreclosed ranch house, single story, dirt driveway leading off a rural road 3 miles from the nearest neighbor. No surveillance cameras visible. 2 vehicles parked behind the house. A silver Mercedes with plates that matched the partial I'd memorized, and a black SUV with Riverside plates registered to one of Marcus Webb's known associates. I sat in my Honda Civic a quarter-mile down the road, hidden behind an overgrown hedge, watching through binoculars I'd used for 5 years of FBI surveillance operations. The house looked quiet. No movement in the windows. No obvious guards outside. But I could see someone had reinforced the front door. Professional security, the kind that says people inside don't want uninvited guests. My phone buzzed. Martinez, please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing. I found the safe house, San Bernardino. I'm sending you coordinates now. Amanda, stay in your vehicle. Do not approach the location. I'm dispatching HRT immediately. ETA 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Lily might not have 90 minutes. The ransom payment was scheduled for morning, and professional crews don't waste time after they've been paid. Victoria's order would be clear. Make sure there's no evidence left. Evidence meant Lily. Bob, if they're planning to kill her after the payment, we might not have 90 minutes. Then it's even more critical that you do not go in. You're not FBI anymore. You're not trained for tactical entry. You go in there alone. You'll get yourself killed and potentially get Lily killed. Stay in your vehicle. That's not a request price. That's me telling you as your friend to not do something monumentally stupid. I looked at the house. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. I thought about Michael Torres, 6 years old, found dead in a basement 40 minutes after I'd located him. 40 minutes too late because I'd waited for backup, followed protocol, done everything by the book. I appreciate the friendship, Bob. Tell HRT to hurry. I hung up before he could respond. Then I pulled on the tactical vest I'd kept in my trunk, black Kevlar, slightly worn but still rated, a remnant from my FBI days that I'd never been able to throw away. I checked my Glock 19, muscle memory from 5 years of training making my movements automatic. Chamber check. Magazine check. Safety off. I hadn't fired this weapon in 3 years, but some skills your hands remember even when your brain has tried to forget. I moved toward the house the way the FBI had trained me, low and fast, using terrain for concealment, minimizing my exposure time. The rear of the property had more cover, overgrown brush and dead trees that provided shadows. The window on the east side had a broken latch I could see from 30 yards out. I was 10 feet from the window when I heard the voices inside. Timelines moved up. Male voice. Flat. Professional. The same voice from the ransom call, the same speech patterns I'd analyzed. Marcus Webb. She wants it done tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight. Make it look like the cartel did it. Leave the body where it'll be found quickly. We need the father to know it's over. The body. Lily's body. They were talking about a 7-year-old child like she was already dead, like she was a problem to be solved rather than a life to be protected. Why the rush? Second male voice, younger, less certain. She's worried about the teacher. Said the teacher used to be FBI. Wants this finished before someone figures it out. Someone. Me. Victoria knew I was hunting her, and her solution was to kill Lily immediately. I moved faster, abandoning stealth for speed. The window opened with a creak that sounded deafening in the quiet night. I pulled myself through, weapon drawn, landing inside what looked like an abandoned office. Dust everywhere. Old furniture. The smell of mildew and desperation. The house layout was simple. I could hear the voices coming from upstairs. I moved through the ground floor quickly, clearing rooms with tactical precision that was still hardwired into my nervous system. Kitchen clear, living room clear, bathroom clear, stairs, old wood that would creak. I took them slowly, weighed on the edges where boards were least likely to make noise. 5 years of FBI training and 3 years of teacher patience combining into something lethal and determined. Second floor hallway. 3 doors. 2 open rooms visible, empty, 1 closed door. I could hear crying behind it. A child's crying, muffled, and terrified. Lily. I moved faster, adrenaline overriding caution. The window opened silently. I slipped inside, weapon drawn, moving through the house with the tactical clearing pattern that was still hardwired into my nervous system after 3 years away. Second door, locked. I could hear crying on the other side, a child's crying, muffled and terrified. Lily. I whispered at the door. It's Miss Price, I'm getting you out. The crying stopped. Miss Price? I'm right here, sweetheart. I need you to move to the corner farthest from the door. Can you do that? Okay. I kicked the door. It splintered on the second hit. Cheap interior lock, not the reinforced security of the front door. Lily was huddled in the corner, her frozen backpack clutched to her chest, her face tear-streaked and pale. She ran to me and I caught her, holding her tight for 3 seconds, long enough to register that she was alive, breathing, unharmed, before the footsteps pounded up the stairs. Window, I said, pushing her toward it. Climb down. There are FBI agents coming. Run to them. What about you? I'll be right behind you. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that keeps children alive. She climbed out as the first crew member burst through the door. I'd like to say what happened next was heroic. It wasn't. It was messy and terrifying. 3 minutes of violence that ended with 2 crew members on the ground, one running for his life, and me with a dislocated shoulder and blood running down my face from a cut above my eye. But Lily was gone. Lily was running toward the FBI vehicles that were just pulling up, their sirens cutting through the California twilight. Lily was safe. I heard Martinez shouting my name as I stumbled down the stairs. I heard the FBI breaching the front door, professional and efficient. I saw the crew leader on the ground, his hands zip-tied behind his back, his face pressed into the carpet. And I saw Victoria Chen's phone number in his recent calls log. 17 calls in the last 6 days. We had her. The arrest happened at the Pasadena Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Victoria Chen was accepting the Stepmother of the Year award, giving a tearful speech about her dedication to Lily during this difficult time. When FBI agents walked onto the stage, the room went silent. 500 people in evening gowns and tuxedos watching as Special Agent Martinez showed his badge. Victoria Chen, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, and wire fraud. Her face changed. I was watching from the audience. Martinez had gotten me a ticket specifically so I could see this moment, and I watched her expression shift from fake tears to genuine panic in the span of 2 seconds. She tried to run. In 3-inch heels and a designer gown, she tried to run from federal agents. They had her on the ground in 5 seconds, her hands cuffed behind her back, her carefully styled hair falling in her face. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Someone started screaming. The video would be viral by morning. Stepmother of the Year arrested on stage, the trophy still on the podium where she'd set it down. Justice has a sense of irony sometimes. The trial lasted 13 weeks. The prosecution called it one of the most calculated child murder plots in California history. I testified for 2 full days, explaining how I'd tracked Victoria's planning, how I'd connected Helen Torres's bribe to the security system failures, how I'd found the safe house through investigative work I'd learned in the FBI. The defense tried to paint me as an unstable ex-agent with a vendetta, a woman who couldn't accept that she'd failed to protect a student and had manufactured evidence to cover her failures. That strategy collapsed when the prosecution played a recorded phone call between Victoria and the crew leader, a call I'd captured during my surveillance. Victoria's voice, cold and calculated. That teacher is the problem. She used to be FBI. If anyone figures it out, it's her. Make sure there's no evidence left. Evidence. She meant Lily. She meant making sure her 7-year-old stepdaughter's body would never be found. But the moment that destroyed Victoria's defense came when Lily testified. 7 years old, speaking via closed-circuit television with a therapy dog beside her, describing the bad lady who came to the warehouse where they kept her. She said to make sure there's no evidence left, Lily said, her voice small but clear. And when I saw her, I knew she meant me. She wanted me to disappear. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Victoria Chen was found guilty on all counts, 35 years in federal prison. Eligible for parole after 28. Helen Torres got 20 years for conspiracy and bribery. The crew leader got 25. The 3 other crew members got 15 to 20 each. Victoria's assets were seized. $2.8 million she'd transferred from Williams' accounts, $1.1 million in jewelry, a $500,000 car collection. All of it liquidated to pay restitution to Lily's trust fund and cover the costs of the investigation. I received $2.5 million in restitution and settlements. The money from Victoria's seized assets, from Helen Torres's bribe money being returned, from Meadowbrook School's settlement for administrator conspiracy. William Chen offered me reinstatement at the FBI. Martinez had put in a recommendation, and the Bureau wanted me back. $140,000 a year, return to crimes against children, full benefits, and pension restoration. I turned it down. Instead, I accepted William's offer to become Lily's private security consultant and educator. $200,000 a year, full benefits, and the most important job in the world, keeping Lily safe while she healed. She lives with me 4 days a week, with William 3 days a week. We call it co-parenting, though the paperwork says I'm her legal godmother and guardian. The arrangement works because we both have the same priority, giving Lily the stability and safety she deserves. She still calls me Miss Price sometimes, though now she also calls me Miss Amanda Mom, which makes my eyes water every time. I developed the Price Protocol, security standards for schools with high net worth families, requiring FBI-level background checks on administrators, adopted by over 100 private schools across the country. I train teachers to recognize signs of abuse and kidnapping risk, reaching 500 educators annually through guardian teacher training workshops. I consult for the FBI on child predator cases, part-time and remote, because some skills are too valuable to waste. I wrote a children's book called Miss Price Keeps Us Safe, teaching kids about trusted adults versus predators, now used in over 200 schools. And I speak at FBI training sessions, teaching new agents about the classroom as crime scene, what educators should watch for, how teachers can be the first line of defense. Victoria's case led to California law requiring oversight of stepparents with financial motive in child welfare decisions. Helen Torres's conviction led to stricter penalties for administrators who ignore abuse signs. Meadowbrook Elementary installed new security systems and a completely new administration. Enrollment dropped 40% after the scandal, but the families who stayed knew their children were safer than they'd ever been. 3 years after I left the FBI, I'd thought I was done saving children. I thought teaching was a safe alternative to the soul-crushing work of hunting predators. But standing in my classroom now, watching Lily help younger students with their reading, seeing her smile return slowly but surely, I understand something I didn't before. I never left the FBI, I just changed the battlefield. Because the most dangerous thing you can do to a predator is become a teacher who used to hunt them professionally. Someone who knows their patterns, their methodologies, their weaknesses. Someone who will break every rule, cross every line, and risk everything to bring a child home. Someone who understands that maternal instinct combined with FBI training isn't just powerful, it's unstoppable. They took the wrong child from my classroom. They thought I was just a teacher. They didn't know I was FBI. They didn't know I don't leave children behind. And now, thanks to a 7-year-old girl with dark pigtails and a frozen backpack who survived 6 weeks of hell and came out stronger, they never will again.